Welcome to a roundtable on psychology. We've got three experts with us to discuss the question of mental approach in archery and how to progress your mental game. So if you guys could introduce yourself, we'll get started.
Okay, hi, I'm Rich Collins. I work with Archery GB, and I've been working with the squads there for the last 3 years now. Obviously looking forward to what was this year, and now we've got another year's worth of planning to get into.
Hi, I'm Cas. I'm a physiotherapist, a sports physiotherapist, and a haptotherapist. You can call it, I think, the science of affection, something like that in English. I'm mostly joining the Olympic archery team from Holland with this body-mind reaction or integration. So yeah, that's my part of the job. I'm doing that for 1 season now. For the Olympics that didn't go on, so don't have any results yet.
My name is Gina Hazard-Grover. I am a mindset coach. I work with athletes, and for the last 7 years, I've mostly been working with archers. My academic training is as a counselor educator. I graduated from the University of Florida, go Gators. And I'm very excited to learn from all this. And I've worked with a lot of archers and a lot of coaches of all levels. So I feel privileged to have lots of tips that they've given me. So I'd love to share.
Very welcome, guys. Thank you for joining us. We're going to start off this conversation talking about the relationship between mental approach and success in archery. So maybe I can ask you, Rich, how much of archery is mental?
Oh, it's all of it. No, we'd have a few arguments with coaches. No, look, it's a big part of it. My feeling with all sport, you get a good baseline of being able to execute whatever you're doing, but then ultimately you've got to be able to do it when it really matters, and being able to do that when it really matters is really all down to that. So I wouldn't put a percentage on it, but certainly within our squads, we recognise that the mental approach and your ability to perform with this just as much as everything else is absolutely critical, and therefore I'm fortunate enough to be able to work with a good chunk of the athletes and the coaches, and they really kind of take the psychological element on board when they're working, which is a really useful part. Where there's some other sports, maybe some team sports, where maybe it's harder to see the impact of psychology, whereas archery, it's sometimes it can be really clear.
Kaz, I know you work on the relationship between the body and the mind. How would you say that relationship manifests itself? What's the difference between a good archer, a great archer, and perhaps a not so great archer in terms of that mindset and how it relates to how well they can shoot on the field?
Well, I'm an amateur still, but the way I think it works is, well, you have maybe you guys, probably you guys know Kahneman. And Kahneman is about system 1 and 2. To keep it easy, I talk about him. And the system 1 is more the intuitive part, and system 2 is more about rational and thinking, the cognitive part. And I think when the pressure goes up, so when the performance has to be there, the pressure goes up, but the thinking goes up too. And the way I work with the team, and where the person that does best, I think it's more about how does it work when your mind goes up and you can still be able to feel what's happening in your body. And I think when you're choking a little bit, it's more that you're thinking about it than you're going for the intuitive letting it go part. So yeah, that's so a good archer, in my opinion, would be able to recognize that the thinking goes off, but in the same time go back to your body and try to trust on the inner side of your body, something like that.
Okay. Gina, in terms of mindset and game, is there specific skills in an archer's mind that you think are key for success?
Absolutely. I agree with these gentlemen here for sure. And when you think about the top archers, they have, they're very resilient. They're able to be in the moment with an arrow, and then the next arrow, they forget about the arrow before. So they're very able to clear their mind in between. And that's what I noticed. And they have certain techniques and things that they will do to help quiet the mind. I call it repatterning. It's like a word that I use. And so there are some things that you can say and do. There's techniques like visualization, breathing, mantra, self-talk, that's positive. And a lot of these top archers, they do use these skills. And that's what I help them with. I help them find the skills that works for them specifically, because everybody is different. It needs to be customized.
And to all of you, the question with exercise and progressing this kind of skill set, with shooting arrows, you know what your score is. You can progress your score. How do you recognize the level of your mental game, and how do you progress it and evaluate how you're progressing?
I think the biggest thing for me is, and we talked about these skills. All three of us have talked about kind of skills that you can have as an archer. But ultimately, you've got to be able to be reflective. You've got to be able to think through what's happened and why has it happened. So if you can start to appreciate, okay, well, I didn't do very well in that arrow. It was because actually I started getting completely conscious and thinking about the execution. Then actually we can go, okay, my mental processes, I didn't keep them in place there. What do I need to do? Am I tired? Have I not taken my time out between ends? Have I not done any of my strategies that I do? Or am I just thinking too hard about the score? So for me, although there's loads of really brilliant skills and strategies that we have, they're almost, for me, worthless unless you can develop a real reflective ability to think through what has happened, why has it happened like this, what do I need to do instead? And that's really critical. And that's just comes through discussion and making notes about performance and really trying to understand it, or talking to a coach or a practitioner. This is going on. Why is that? And actually being able to explore it, that gives you that really good solid foundation. And that's definitely where I almost like to start with building people who can think about performance.
Agreed. Part of what I build into the routine is post-performance routine, for sure. So, pre-performance, performance, and post-performance. And at the end, it's what did you do well? What do you need to work on? And then what's your plan to execute that improvement that you need to work on, for sure.
Yeah, I think that most of the time, what I work like my part of the job is that I talk less and work more with the body. So we do certain kind of exercises where they feel coming the pressure up a little bit, and we talk about, okay, what's this feeling and what happens with your thinking and stuff like that. So yeah, I use mostly body exercises or approach exercises, contact exercises that helps the archer feel what's happening with the body and with the mind. Sometimes I talk with the guys and I say, okay, but thinking is a feeling too. Maybe it sounds strange, but somehow most feel that they're thinking. Yeah. So I work. So we talked before we started this recording about a certain kind of that into Zoom you're having eye contact all the time, and is that normal or not? But I actually have an exercise, a sort of stare down, but only like when I work with one of the boys, we do just looking at each other, and later on we talk about, okay, if you're only able to look and you're looking into each other's eyes and faces, what's the kind of feeling that happens? And it goes up and down. It's like it fluctuates like the volume of sound. And we talk about that's the same feeling that happens during a game of archery.
And that's the challenge, isn't it? Is applying it to training is always the challenge. And an athlete, so actually, it's nothing like shooting at a competition, is it? How do I practice that? And that's always the challenge, is finding that way to get the body feeling like it, or getting the mind to feel like, here they are shooting in a gold medal match, as an example, and being able to practice that kind of being in the moment, recognizing where I am, where's my body, or being able to enact my processes and think clearly. And that's the challenge, is finding training opportunities to do so, and getting the athletes and coaches to come with you on that. And that's always great fun, coming up with like really kind of interesting ways to get everyone to experience a gold medal match without actually being in one.
Yes, I often tell people you have to be able to trust your training. So you need to look at your training. And so if you're going to practice, you need to at least a couple of times a week practice under the real conditions as closely as possible as a tournament. So if you're going out there and taking a break every now and then, that's great. But you do need to go and put in a full day, show up as if you were to really show up at a venue and eat the food that you're planning on eating, do your mental routine and try to keep everything the same and be able to trust your training so that when you're at a tournament, you're not like, oh, what do I do? It's the same as what you've always been doing. You know, you practice it during your practices. And so sometimes I've noticed the difference between, like, going back to our first question, the top athletes and some of the ones that are still struggling is they're not able to trust their training. And so they just need to evaluate how they're training. And part of it is actually simulating as much as possible an entire shot routine and an entire day of shooting as if you would and when you go to a tournament. For sure.
So when you're starting archery and you're improving, people talk about the mental approach and being strong mentally. How do you get on that ladder of understanding where you need to be as an athlete or as a competitor to perform well?
If I understand you right, I think it starts with when somebody's upcoming. Most of the time they feel a lot of pressure because I think it's an all different kind of world with all of a sudden you're into a world of expectations, and the pressure goes up. Most of the time, I think in the person itself too. So it's not only the pressure outside or the coaches that are nearby, and well, I think what they do good is that they leave it, you know, when they have an off day, not that putting the pressure on, but most of the time I think it's something that happens inside the, the person itself. So when somebody starts and it's a talent, that happens. I think in the beginning, as far as I know, the pressure goes up, and it's a mental thing and where they have to work on and recognize and be more comfortable with themselves, building trust, and yeah. And work with that. Well, there's a sentence coming up about George Mumford, and he wrote the book The Mindful Athlete, and he talked about being in the eye of the hurricane. So that happens also with this upcoming athlete, that it's like a hurricane outside, and the thing you have to learn is that you're trying to stay in the eye of the hurricane. So still keep this peace of mind or silence into yourself and your body, know what you're doing, but keeping the pressure a little bit outside. I don't know if people understand me if I talk like that, but yeah, I don't know what you guys think about it when I talk like this, but.
No, it makes sense. I think you touched on something that made me think about compartmentalizing, to be able to tune everything out in order to reach that goal that you're talking about. I totally agree with you. They're able to tune everything out. I liken it to like a surgeon. When a surgeon goes into the operating room, got to tune everything out, leave everything outside, and just deal with that moment. So I think when you find where that is or where your difficulties are to be able to get into that moment is where you start. I think your question was where we start. Did I get off target? Where do you start with someone, and how do you know where, you got to ask them what their goals are and figure out and watch them shoot and know where their anxiety and that pressure comes in, and then help them tamper that pressure, because pressure hits everybody differently and they're different triggers for everybody.
I think one of the biggest things, especially for those starting out, and there are not many sports where success is so critically evident than archery with a score-based system. And I think for those who are starting out or just getting into archery, holding scores in mind about, oh, well, I want to score this or I want to score that in this competition, that's really unhelpful. And actually, it's better to think about is, okay, if this is a score, this is my ambition to get this score. What are the things that I need to do underneath that that's going to help me get there? So it might be, okay, when you step onto the line, you're in shooting mode. That might be one of the things. It might be that knowing that you have a really good shot routine, which helps you set your position, your posture, helps you set how the way that you're actually shooting and executing the shot. Being in that's really important. Coming off the line and thinking about that end, that's really important. Having good food, all the hydration, all those kind of things. Unless you do all of that stuff, you're never going to get that score. So actually setting your focus on doing all the things that you know will get you to that score and getting your mind
Yes.
completely. That's absolutely critical. And for those of you who might be going, oh, this season I'm going to get this score, try and move your mind away from that and focus on, okay, what do I need to do to get to that score?
Yeah, so that's a nice thing. And what I was thinking about, like, okay, you can be busy with keeping the score out, but what I sometimes talk about with the guys is also about, okay, notice the feeling. So how does the feeling happen? Like the circumstance, how, if I understood you well, you're talking about, okay, create circumstances that you're approaching a certain kind of mood into your mind and body that makes able to get there. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. It might be that, okay, you got the score, and to get that, you know, you've got to be in your absolute A game. Okay, yeah. So how do I create that mindset? And it might be, well, 5 minutes of breathing or 5 minutes of mindfulness might be really critical. Okay, so your goal then for this tournament is to go there and every day do your 5 minutes of breathing, your 5 minutes of mindfulness, whilst all the other stuff you're doing as well. And it is just maximizing the chance that you're going to hit that top score that you want. And that's why I kind of use scores as, well, they're ambitions, they're not goals, they're ambitions, because the goals are the things that will get you to that ambition. Hit those, you're more likely to get that.
Agreed. I think people need to focus on process, not outcome, which is what we're talking about. But I think some people don't understand the discrepancy between what is actually outcome and what is focus. I mean, what is outcome and what is process? Because I'll hear people say, I'm focusing on the outcome, but then when on the process, but what they're telling me is they're focusing on the outcome. Sorry, it's really early here. And so part of what our job is to teach them, that's actually outcome, that's not process. So let's get back to getting those goals in the first place. Like you said, if you do all of those things, the outcome or score, which is a dirty word in my book, will show up on the target.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, again, if you're going into a new season, whatever it is, think back to the times where you shot really well and identify what did you do on that day that got you to that score, rather than, oh, well, I got that score before, so I could be able to get it again. No, work out what you did and start working out how do you do those every single time.
We're talking about ideal
Exactly.
and managing pressure. Is when you're in control of your mind and you've got those mindsets, is it purely limiting pressure, or does a good mental game become a tool and a powerful weapon you can use when you're competing?
You want a little bit of that anxiety. The idea of trying to get completely calm and perfect level, you don't want to get rid of the anxiety completely, that competition anxiety. You want to learn how to harness it and be able to use it, and then maybe tone it down, because some people have a little more. But yeah, you definitely need to have a little bit. So you can do certain things to help center yourself, like what you were talking about with the physical part of it. You can do physical things, like when you feel that your anxiety is rising and the pressure is rising, you can do physical things to help tone it down, or you can do mental things. You can say things to yourself. I'm really interested in what he would have to say about the physicality. Like I will tell clients to maybe do a toe press to kind of get them physically back in the moment. I'd be curious as to what Cass, I'm sorry, it's hard for me to read your name there, what Cass would have to say about it, because that's more your expertise.
So you mean that you have like this small kind of tips that you're putting this toe press in, like the aim of that is that somebody focused on the feeling, you mean? Is that your intention?
Well, like if you're really nervous, the pressure gets high, the anxiety's too high, but you want to get it down to a level that you can harness. Sometimes between shots, or to reset yourself, you can kind of like take your big toe and you can press it into the ground and give you like a reset or a recentering. You know what I'm saying? But and that's like my only trick in the book, because I'm not a physiologist, but I would love to know, what you think about more ideas to help bring that anxiety to a level that is healthy.
Yeah. Well, what we worked on also, for example, most of them, I don't know how it is with you. This is always, I think, certain kind of things that people train with or without music. But for example, for me, when I listen to music myself, it gets up the feeling. So this feeling makes me happy or sad, or when I'm sad, music helps me. So we're able to use music to get a feeling up or down or whatever. It has an influence on feeling. And when you express yourself, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but the pressure goes down when you're expressing yourself, when somebody's in your mind or you're busy with it. Well, we had this kind of discussion in the team about if music could help you, but then so in a training with one of the guys, he was really like, oh, this is an off day, it doesn't work, blah blah blah. And we just had some background music, and with Ron, the bonds coach, he was the only one there, and he wanted to shoot I don't know exactly what he wanted to shoot, a 57 or something, no, 59 probably. And well, what we did was putting the music a little bit up when he's almost getting the click. So,
oh, right,
a little bit up. And we did that every time. And you saw him in the beginning, he was still in this mental state of, but we were playing a little bit. It was a really nice. I can't remember. Well, I have to look at the number, but it was quite a good number too. It was Ron's number actually. But well, what happened was this guy was all of a sudden, it was a really good vibe, and he got into this music. And afterwards we talked about, okay, but what happened now? And he said like, okay, but all of a sudden the music was so up, he wasn't able to think or being in this mental mood. There he had to go off because he had to, he couldn't keep the music out, and so he had to have let it all in. Sorry for my bad English. That worked for me quite well.
Great.
And well, most of the times, what you said, like with every person, it's different. I call it a functional behavior. So most of the people, what I recognize, have something from the past that made a functional behavior in themselves that made them a good athlete. And I always am curious about, okay, what is this mental state of functional behavior that you're really into, that happened in your growth, that made you come so far in this mental body state. And I have, for example, one of the guys, I call him more a street fighter, and the other one is the king of the world, for example. And when we talk about the king of the world, he already has a feeling with this king of the world. And when he thinks of king of the world, there's a click that helps him to get into this king of the world feeling. And the other one has this street fighter, and he goes in and he knows, okay, this is my street fighter feeling. It's something from the past, but whoa, he kicks off with that.
Yeah. And I think
you're kind of talking about a mantra. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the way I work. I don't always have the right words for it, but yeah.
Yeah. And
that's great,
isn't it? It's that individual approach, and for us, like Gina said, like we're going to feel pressure and anxiety is present in all of us all the time, and actually, what that is just as much as a sign of is that your body's ready to do something. If you think about the experiences you have when you're frightened versus the experiences you have when you're enjoying something, actually your body's doing the same thing. What is the only thing that's different is how we're interpreting it. We interpret it as either fear, or we interpret it either as excitement. So actually, what we can do is relearn and re-educate around, I'm feeling really, really tense. And that's okay. Well, you feel tense. That's your body telling you that you've got enough adrenaline there to support you now for the next 2-3 hours through this round, performing at your very, very best. You need that energy, so use it. Okay, so what other things are you going to do to help you now harness that? How are you going to use that? Okay, well, it might be your pre-shot routine. It might be managing yourself between ends. Great, do that. Great. Now we're going to find out how we manipulate the environment to make it harder for you to do it. Because that's what competition is going to be like. Do you still do those things when it's really, really hard? And if you start working through that, okay, this environment is now really, really hard for me to do this, and you still do it, that suggests then we're getting to a point where our mental processes are resilient against pressure. And then if we start working those with actual performance, actual outcome, then we're getting in a position where we're performing at our best when it's really hard to perform, which ultimately is a gold medal match.
Yes. Do you have ideas on like how you create that pressure? I mean, I have a few tips with their permission because everybody is different. I'll make noises while they're shooting. We've done things like in a parking lot, have everybody set their alarms off on their car. Or I take a clicker that you use to train a dog, you know, those clicker ways that you can train a dog. And so with the client's permission and knowing where they are in their process, how vulnerable they are and what kind of a day they're having, obviously the clicker can really kind of mess with them, but it helps them to be able to tune it out. Does that make sense? So do you have like other ideas, like what you do to help people learn and practice and simulate this pressure?
Yeah, for us, obviously it's very individual. So we can have different types of pressure creation. So we might have expectations. Okay, so let's put a score expectation out in front of you. Now, as I spent talking about earlier on, we want to ignore score, but ultimately in a competition, the score is usually in front of you, or at least you're writing down on a sheet against it. So you can't avoid it.
Fair enough.
Can you move it away from your attention and focus on your process? So getting scores in front of you is obviously really useful. Getting cameras and getting people commentating or playing previous commentary in the background was all really useful. But then there's some people who might be more worried about judgment, for example. So they want to look good.
Mm-hmm.
It's really important that they beat so-and-so in their club, and they're going to be worried about their score being posted online and everything. So that might be, okay, when you're training, whatever you score in this, you're going to post it on your social media. So it creates a pressure that they go, oh, what? Oh, really? I've got to do that. I've got to shoot well now. And then suddenly we've got that pressure from a completely manipulated situation. You know, for those who are watching this, think about when have you been most stressed out? Whenever you felt the most anxiety in performance? Work out what it was about it that created that, and then try and go, okay, how do I do that in training? So if it was because, you know, your mum or your dad or your partner was watching you, I'll get them along to training and get them to set you a score and see if you can do it. And again, it's not about getting the score, it's about, can you do all those things that make you perform well whilst you're under this pressure?
Yeah, I've got the same thing. Also, like an extra exercise well, for example, what we do is an approaching, or what I'm a physio, so I can touch people also. That's a advantage. So what I noticed that most of the archers are not, well, they're having difficulties with when I really touch them on the body, you know, for example, on the lower back. And we just talk about, I don't do a lot with my hands, actually. I just put my hands on the lower back and see what's happening, because they're normal wise in the competition or whatever. They're not used to somebody touching them. So that gives pressure also. And also with the approaching technique where you're just standing in front of somebody who's shooting, you know, you're into his bubble. That makes it difficult too. So that's what I'm thinking about as an extra.
Yeah.
How do archers learn to integrate mental training into their normal practice routines, especially those who just go and shoot arrows, you know, and don't really think about structure to their practice?
One of the things I see, and the same with golf actually really similar to archery in terms of those mental processes, is people say, oh yeah, I've got a shot routine. And you ask them about the shot routine, they just describe to you all the physical things that they need to do to take a shot. It's like, okay, great, you know how physically to put together your best shot. But what about those mental processes? So are you giving time for yourself to settle into the moment? Are you giving yourself time to allow any other thoughts to disappear out of your mind? Are you giving yourself time to focus your mind on what you're about to do? Because it's very easy to say, yeah, I'm pointing at the 10. Well, are you? Are you really looking at the 10? Like, have you actually stopped to check whether you're looking at the 10, or are you looking somewhere else? Because looking at it is very different to actually holding attention on it. So I think, you know, to build these in, even to simple things like pre-shot, write down what do you do before a shot, and note, are there any things here that help my mind as opposed to just my physical thing? And then you can start to work out, if you know what makes you anxious, where are my gaps? If you get really anxious and tense, and you start to feel like your breathing's struggling, and you've got nothing in your pre-shot routine about managing your breathing, then there's an opportunity to go, okay, I need to focus on my breath at some point during my routine, and then working out what feels best. Because actually, everyone will be completely different, and they'll want to focus on breath at different times in the shot. Just find out what works and feels good for you, and you can only do that through lots and lots and lots and lots of practice.
Yeah, I think that's what
Well said.
I think that's what I do most with the people, like work on what they're feeling. Like, if I understand you well, you're saying that okay, when you feel your breathing and you need a certain kind of thing to cope with that. And I most of the time I'll also talk about just you can focus on this 10, or you can focus on your body feeling when you're shooting, or like for most of them I think training can be also a certain kind of how do you say it, meditation. If you're in this mood, you can use it as a meditation. But when you're in a game, you can also be focused on your body itself and feel, okay, ground, for example, from your belly, or do you feel your own middle-sized point of weight? I don't know the English word for
No,
it.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm always busy with how do you come back into your body, to get the cognitive part out, and okay, let's be busy with how your body feels. Going more to the front, to the back. Some people don't even notice that they're totally on the front in the games, for example.
I usually talk about like pre-performance, going through your routine, doing visualization, like, and pantomiming it, whatever works for you. But to kind of start the process and to ground you, a breathing and a mantra, either before every end or before every shot. And that mantra can be something you say, something you feel, something you picture. Everybody is different. And it kind of centers you. You step on the line, you do your process, you start with this mantra and this breathing, and it's tune out the world behind you. My shot has now started, and focuses you. And so some people are more feeling. That's why I had talked to you about that. Some people, their mantra might be, like I said, that toe press. So they press the toe in and they're there. Or some people may imagine like a happy place, or they say something that really means something to them. And I feel like that's a good way during your pre-performance, when you're warming up, all those things that go along with your pre-performance routine, that you end that pre-performance routine right before you start the tournament with a visualization like of a good shot, and get in the moment. And that visualization needs to include your whole shot process, which would include that breathing and mantra before every arrow or every end.
Can I ask you, like this pre-performance, do you sometimes use body touch too? Because we haven't tried it yet, but I think it could help, like getting somebody into his body just by with the feeling, the sense of touch. Just I don't know. Do you know haptotherapy or?
I know what you're saying, but I think I usually, so for them to get into that feeling, the visualizing of a good shot, I tell them to do it with all their gear on. So I'm not actually touching them, although sometimes I take an arrow and I might let them know and say, hey, look at this, feel this. I mean, I'm not a form coach. But their physicality, like you said, in the beginning, before they shoot, when they do that visualization, you put on your finger tab and your quiver, all the sounds, all the feelings, everything, to make it as real as possible. And then, so to me, that's that physical part. I don't know if I answered your question of getting them in that place.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I can understand what you're saying. Yeah, but what maybe I think could be an extra is that when you have this person's touch, I don't know if you ever had it, but when you're into contact with somebody that you're totally together without thoughts,
yes,
and it happens, with a good cuddle, or your child and your with you. That can give this warm, comfortable feeling. And when you're totally at home in your own body, this is the same feeling. So I think when I'm busy, sometimes I can reach this part of the physical state, or physical mental state, where somebody is in this cuddling feeling.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not the great mental state yet to come there for having this pressure up, but you have really somebody pulled into his body.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes. So maybe like your coach or your parent or somebody who you have this connection with, to kind of warm up during pre-performance with them. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think about a physiotherapist or
Sure.
who can help you preparing to do this. But I think it could be an extra one. We didn't try it yet, but I was thinking about it. But it's all about the same, not to get yourself into this mental body state where you're feeling a certain kind of comfort, having trust in yourself, not thinking too much, being able to get on this more intuitive part that you train so hard for, that already has to be inside your body because you trained enough, and you have to be comfortable and trust in yourself. But for that you have to feel your body, like what you said with the I don't see the name, sorry for that, but
that's okay. I can't see that distance either. It was hard. Gina.
I think that connectivity one's really interesting, and I wouldn't say that that's something that I've used, but what we do, and certainly with the coaches as well, is if an athlete can feel that presence of support from their team around them, and by their team it might be just a coach, it might be myself, creating a kind of a space where, right, you are ready. It's almost like the unsaid motivational speech. There's no talking on, there's no hamming up, there's nothing like massive going on. It's just, we're going to stand next to each other like this, and we're just going to look at the target, and then I'm going to walk away, and you're just going to stay there, and then you're just going to ping arrows down there. And that's that kind of the same thing. It's not touch, but it creates that idea of someone's here with me. And that's been actually really important. You know, sometimes the line can be a lonely place. And actually getting that feeling that my whole team is here with me and they help me with this way, that's been really important. And there's certainly been a couple of instances over the last 18 months or so where we've utilised space, certain people in different places, using music to sort of set a person to this right space. And that's, they feel that I'm safe, I'm good, everyone's behind me, now I'm just going to absolutely smash it. And that's what you want, isn't it?
We've all spoken about teams and team comfort and coaches and other experts. Archery is a very individual sport. How important is it, specifically on the psychology side of it, to have support from other people, other coaches or other athletes when competing?
I think it's the most important thing. Yes, it is effectively an individual sport, but I think those who probably reach the top have done that with support of other people around them, whether that's coaches, whether that's experts, whether that's their family members. There will be a team behind them somewhere down the line, and it's a case of working out what can you get from these people, how can they support you. So for me, again, we've talked a lot about skills and abilities and doing things for the mental approach. Actually, for me, it's about building really good relationships. Yeah. So that is absolutely critical. You can't do any of these things. Cass, you can just touch an archer, probably if you don't have a good relationship with them, they've got to know that you're there doing it for a reason. Like, it's all this is so critical. And building a really good shared goal in mind with the important people around you is vital. I don't think that any of the stuff that we've been talking about today would work unless you have a really good relationship as a foundation.
Agreed. Absolutely. Part of what I do is help those people who are supporting the archer and help educate them on how to support the archer and find out from working with the archer what they do and don't prefer, because sometimes it's hard for the archer to tell their supporters that. So I can be the go-between to say they prefer this, they don't prefer that. They can get the water out of the cooler by themselves. You don't need to give it to them. Or, hey, make sure you give them that water. I mean, seriously, those tiny things, when you see that the people around you have taken the time to look at those little things that matter to you, it feels really good and you're very, very supported. Absolutely. Being heard, I think that's the biggest thing. Having the archer be able to express what they need and having them be heard. And the way they're heard is by you, the coach, or the people supporting them, doing what it is that they're asking. That's like very, very powerful. And it helps with that self-image and self-esteem, which is intrinsically tied into their mindset.
Yeah, I'm really lucky that the coaches that I work with are just so on board with some of the psychology, and you can say, oh, try doing this, and then 2 weeks later you'll see them doing it, and you're stuck in this weird place where you're like, kind of, well, it's really good they're doing it, but I've just put myself out of the job. That's ultimately the job of a psychologist is to put yourself out of the job, because you want to be able to teach the skills so the athlete or the athlete-coach relationship can just go, thanks very much, see you later. Because then they develop the skill, are resilient. They don't need someone telling them how to do something. They should be able to do it themselves. And that is always great when you walk in somewhere and go, oh, you're doing that exercise we did the other week, but you're not doing it with me. Okay, cool.
That's the biggest flattery ever, right? It's like what you're hoping for them, and it makes you feel good that you've like let the birdie fly. Yeah.
Yeah, let the birdie fly. Yeah. And that's the same one. Well, we didn't talk about it, but when we talk about relationships, the comfortable feeling of home, or like what I told about the functional part behind the person, most of the time it comes from the childhood up, and the way the relation is with parents, sister, brothers, stuff like that. And yeah, we didn't talk about it a lot yet, but yeah, there's I think one of the things that maybe is most forgotten at an athlete is just a person with a home ground back feeling that has to be working out well too, because otherwise your part of the mind is busy with stuff that really matters when it comes up to that. I hope that was in good English.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, how can we relate this directly to points or to success on the field? Where do you see the benefit, and how can you understand the benefit as an archer of having these good mental approaches and directly relate them to your ability on the shooting line?
I mean, I would say my famous line is, if you spend hours and hours and hours practicing form and you realize the value of that, it's the same thing with mental. You've got to treat it and practice it just like you practice your form. And when you're practicing your form and you're practicing your mental, they come together, and it results in points on the target. It does. I know that sounds really oversimplified, but
I think it is simple. I think for us, it's okay. We need to get you to feel focused. Okay, how do we get focused? When have you felt focused in the past? What have you done when you've been focused? Come back to that reflective ability. It's okay, so in the past, you've done this, you felt focused, you got a good outcome. Right, let's start doing that behavior again. Let's start doing that thing again. Now, if we start getting the good results, we're seeing focus occurring and the results come with it, then, okay, we can't 100% say that it was because of that thing, but we can say that there's a good chance that it is. If something changes because you're doing something new and it keeps going like that, and that when you get to an end of performance, you go, you know what, my pre-shot process was 100%, I was on my A game today, and you've got a new PB, likelihood is that there was probably a good link between those two things. Again, it comes back to what went well today, how did it go well, how will I keep doing that in the future?
Yeah, it's yeah. Well, I was thinking about that. You know, we have these terms about thinking, mental, body, and what I notice is what's coming up more and more is that it's part of this integration. And when an athlete sees that it's an integration, it's not body, it's not mind, it's an integration where you have to integrate body and mind and feel that it works together. And when you train both and let it come together, then an athlete becomes more complete. So when an athlete is not focused only on one part, but sees that the actual visually training combined with the mental focus, and you have some exercises where you combine that together and you see that outcome coming, so your performance goes up in the sports itself. Yeah, that's where an athlete knows that, okay, this has to come together. It's some effort. I have to be disciplined for it, but it helps out to integrate both instead of seeing it at two different parts. And I think that's the part where it all begins, the Western thought of body and mind, where we have to get rid of and more the focus on integration. And I think most athletes who start are more about this, well, grown up with this mental body stuff, where they have to see that it's more integrated at all.
Um, Athletes at the high level, when they want to perform at the Olympics and they want to compete, it's very easy to get someone like that to buy into improving their mental or practicing specifically on their mental game. Sort of archers that are starting out, that are competing but not at the same kind of level. A lot of them, I think, don't really appreciate or aren't really interested in going so seriously into the mental approach. Is there a simpler or easier to access way to think of this and way to approach it?
Ooh, I like that one. I do. I feel like we separate it and then drop it on them later and say, hey, there's this mental component. It doesn't need to be this big separate deal. From day one, when that child or that archer, however old they are, picks up that bow, we teach them safety, we teach them all these other things. We should be just throwing right in there a simple mindset outline. It should be given to them along with safety, along with form and mental. It should be just integrated from day one, that it's a matter of fact that this is the way it is, rather than having to rescue later and teach after the fact. And then it's kind of just, it is what it is. Like, I'm not a form coach, but like, anchor is anchor. I don't know how the language is used across the world, but over here, anchor is anchor. You know where you are. I'm not even gonna do my airbow because I'm terrible. I'm not an archer. So it is what it is. So when you get up to the line, you should be teaching these young kids, take a clean breath, say something good to yourself when they start. And then it's just built in from day one. And there's no question that it matters just as much as form.
I think,
we're passionate about that.
we've talked, all three of us talked about quite an individual approach to athletes. And for those who are watching, want to get started, for me, it's just, make a journal and ask yourself why your performance went really well or why it didn't go so well. And then you work out what you did in those days that made that happen. And if you start then collecting all the things together that you did that made performances go well, then you're starting to get to an idea of how you're managing this going into performance. And that's a really easy way to do it. And most of the time, if you ask anyone, oh, why did you shoot that PB today? And you ask why, they'll just go, oh, I just felt good. No, that's not enough. We need to know more than that. Why did you feel good? What did you do? Oh, well, I had some time out with my partner last night and we watched a film and relaxed. Oh, okay, did you? What do you do sometimes? Oh, well, sometimes I go and stay somewhere and I think about archery and I watch loads of videos. Oh, well, how do you perform then? Not very well. Oh, well, that's interesting, isn't it? So our preparation for competition looks like a nice meal and a movie. Great, perfect. There you go. You've done some psychology.
Yes.
That, for me, is a really easy way that anyone can do. Just ask yourself, why did you perform like you did today? Make a note of the good stuff and start working out how you do that consistently.
Well, sometimes I just talk about why they picked up the bow as an extra, just to get back to this base feeling of why did you actually start. Then everything gets rid of the extra part of pressure, scores. Just why did you pick up the bow, and what kind of feeling was it? Yeah.
Do you think archery has a benefit on the mind and a mental benefit in life outside of the sport?
Can you repeat the question for me?
Do you think archery specifically archery, has any benefit on the mind and the psychology of a person outside of the sport?
Definitely, I think, yeah. And definitely. So if I understand you well, you say like if archery helps you out being a mental good person, are you saying that? Well, I talk sometimes about people do yoga nowadays or meditation, but I think archery for most of the people can be the same. When they're shooting, they're off their thoughts when they're doing it in the way I think it's supposed to be. But they're in this kind of state that you want to be in there because you're integrated with what you're doing, and then it can be really relaxed and nice flow going on feeling. So yeah, it definitely helps out to have some relaxed time. Now we are talking about the other way around, that you need to perform, but if you think it on the different way of picking up a bow and why did you start, yeah, that's what helps out, this One of the guys really likes to shoot and train, but he doesn't like really to compete because he likes this mental state of training and just shooting arrows. So yeah, I think it could be very popular if people would know that it's the same as yoga or meditation.
I do. I think it's a. Yo, you go ahead, Rich.
No, you go, Gina. Go on.
Thank you. I feel like it definitely helps when you're in a sport where there's so much time to think. It definitely helps you organize your thoughts. But I will say specifically, as a counselor educator, I have several clients who have ADD or ADHD, and archery is the sport that absolutely helped them with how their ADD or ADHD plays out in their life. So they actually were gravitated towards this sport because it helped give them a certain kind of quiet and focus that they needed, that a lot of other things they tried didn't work. So in that aspect, I would say it can definitely help.
Yeah, I think it's that element. It's a very pure sport. You know, it's very disciplined. You know, within your shooting end, that's all you got to do. You got to do things 3 or 6 times. You know, that's it. And I think to have that ability to be able to focus for that long and then relax. You know, changing of mindsets. You know, that's important. The discipline to be able to focus 100% and then be able to deliberately go, now I'm not focused and now I'm relaxed. But sometimes we need that in life. We can't be switched on all the time. And even during this conversation, I'm sure between the 4 of us, we've sort of gone like this a little bit. Because there's no way.
A little bit.
You can't concentrate for 45 minutes. It doesn't happen. So I think where archery, you have to focus for 4 minutes. Then that does provide some discipline where you can really actually go, right, what am I doing right now? Oh yeah, I'm doing this. And I think that's a beneficial thing in life, for sure.
Okay, well.
That's a super, super good point. I've written letters of recommendation for people, and that is part of the piece I will put in. As an archer, they're able to turn on, turn off, calm and quiet mind no matter what's going on. There could be like a fire behind them, but they've got to focus. So I fully agree.
Yeah, nice mental training.
So 45 minutes, we can't concentrate for all that time. So I'll close this up by asking you if you could give me the...
Thank you, Rich. No, I'm just kidding.
If you could give me the one kind of mental value or the one mindset value that you think an archer requires to win at the highest level. We'll start with Rich, shall we?
Being able to reflect.
Yeah. Cass?
Yeah, well, I'm reflect and being able to reflect on the feeling in your body that you need, something like that.
Gina?
I would say you have to be able to harness your positivity and be resilient.
Okay. Well, thank you very, very much for joining me for this conversation, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
And I want you have this. I want to come back to this quote of George Mumford, and he has this quote like, "Your mind tells you you can't do it, but your body knows how." I think I mean that with this body reflection. So yeah, I wanted to share that one as last. Yeah.
What was that again? What was it?
Your mind tells you you can't do it, but your body knows how. So then you put your mind off, but have to trust that your body knows how to do it.
That's a fantastic way to end. So thanks again, guys. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the summit content.